Hello. We are going to start a new topic in this video, which is vectors. Vectors, much like dynamic memory, are very convenient for us being able to manage data that we're not totally sure about the size of while we're working with our code. So to dig right in here, let's take a look at setting up a vector. We're going to initialize a vector with some strings, make a function that iterates through it and prints all the elements. We'll also have our function print out the size and the capacity of the vector after we do the printing. So let's get started. In order to work with vectors, I'm going to need to include them, as well as IOStream, and we'll use the standard namespace, which is where vectors belong. So if you don't include the standard namespace, make sure to remember that they are part of that space. Okay, and so here's what we'll be doing. I guess I'll put this in the cell above. Just right here. Okay. So let's make our vector. So to make a vector of strings, I'm going to declare that it is a vector of strings. And I'll call it myvec. And to initialize it with string values, there's a number of different ways to do it, but the way that I'm going to go with is this. Hi. Oops. How are you? And if you check out the slides, you can see that there's a variety of different ways to get your vectors, but this one will be fine for me, and we can see the output just like this. And it looks almost like an array, and honestly, it's almost the same. The only difference is that because vectors automatically manage dynamic memory for you, that means that we can treat this much like Python treats lists. So we're in example one. Now, we want to iterate through the vector and print each element. And so conveniently, we have something similar to the way that we can use Python to say, for item in list. C++ has something similar for vectors, where I can say for string my string in my vector. And this is what the syntax looks like. And now inside my loop, I actually have a copy of my string, and I can literally just output my string. Now, I should be putting this into a function, and so the function doesn't return anything, so let's make this a void function, print vec details given a string vector myvec. There we go. And then we will output the size is myvec.size, and the capacity as well. And let's run it. So print vec details myvec. We can see, hi, how are you? The capacity and size are both 4 because I literally have space for these 4 elements over there. So that's it just to get started. So we were able to initialize a vector. We're able to make a function that accepts a vector as a parameter. We can iterate through based on the, and note here we didn't have to actually use the size. Like we can obviously access it if we need to. You can see here if we need to know that there are 4 words there, we can figure that out from myvec.size. But when we make our for loop, we actually can just say for each string in the vector, which is a very convenient syntax that you'll want to use whenever you can. So far, we haven't yet seen the difference between size and capacity, but that will come up a bit later. Okay, let's move on. So next step, we're going to continue from the previous exercise to use pushback to add 2 new elements to the vector and popback to take away 3 elements. And when I call the printing function, let's see how the size and capacity change. So we'll duplicate this to exercise 2. Run here. Okay, so I have my vector, and so we'll use pushback to add 2 new elements and popback to remove 3 elements. So myvec.pushback, and here I can add something new, for instance, a word. I could also say myvec.popback 3 times. What did I mess up? think I have to run it all from the top. Okay. Now let's print the vector details again. And what we see is that I added new and I added word, so the vector became hi, how are you, new word. And when I popped back, I removed word, then new, then you. And all I'm left with is hi, how are. And we can see here that the size is 3 and the capacity is 3. I have shrunk the size of my vector. Now, I think the capacity might be different if I do this in a CPP file. Just out of curiosity, I'll give it a try. I think this might be a waste of time, but I'm just curious to see if that's actually different between notebooks and CPP files. It may not be, in which case that's totally fine, but out of curiosity, what happens if I were to run this? So here's my print vector details, int main. Run the code, do some operations, and print my vec details. Just out of curiosity, do we see the same result? Terminal, compile example 2, and go. Yep, okay. So just making sure that our CPP file and our Python notebook, or our Jupyter notebook, I should say, give us the same result here. The size and the capacity have decreased because now I only have these 3 elements. Okay, sounds good. Let us move on to the next one. Okay. We're going to complete some functions. So the first one is called no odds. Given a vector of integers, increment each odd element in the vector. And the second one, which is expand, given a vector of integers and an integer n, which is bigger than the size of the vector, we're going to expand the vector to size n and fill the new elements with the same value as the front. So if the front element of my vector is 1, all the new elements should be 1s. And the way that we're going to do this is using one of the functions from the previous slide. But first, let's get our no odds going. So close all this stuff. Let's make a new notebook here. iostream include vector namespace standard. And here's what we're going to do. Okay. So, no, it doesn't say this returns anything. So this is void no odds. And obviously, it's going to take a vector of integers. Okay, increment each odd element in the vector. Now, we have to be careful about this because you might be tempted to do the following. For int I in my vector, if I modulus 2 is 1, meaning it's odd, I plus plus. Now let's see what happens if I do this. So no compiler errors or anything like that. Let's say that int vector of integers my vec equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we increment each odd element in the vector, we should have 2, 2, 4, 4, 6. So do no odds my vec, output my vec. And what do we notice? Nothing has changed. Why? Well, if we take a look at what's happening in here, we are actually grabbing copies of my vector, of the numbers in my vector. So when we increment I, that's not actually doing anything really, except for temporarily increasing the value of a variable. And as soon as we move on to the next element, everything is gone. So it's not very useful. So what we should do is say I is 0, I is less than the size of my vector, I plus plus. And instead of looking at I, we're looking at my vector of I. And instead of looking at my I plus plus, we should say my vector I plus plus. Now if I run this again, you'll notice, once more, nothing seems to have happened. Why is that? A different reason this time, which is my vector was not passed by reference. I passed a copy of this vector, which is not helpful. I want to actually modify the vector, which means I need to pass it by reference so that the modifications that happen in here actually affect the code down below. Now if I run this, I get my numbers. So it's important to remember that you need to pass a vector by reference if you plan to use your function to modify the contents of the vector, and also that you cannot use the for item in list if you want to actually make changes to those things. Okay. So this is example 3, but we're not finished. We still have expand. Given a vector of integers and a integer n, which is bigger than the size of the vector, expand it and fill in the new elements. So let's make a new function called expand. Takes a vector of integers and also is going to take an int n. And it's important to keep that reference right here. Otherwise, it's not going to really do much of anything. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that the slides have a nice function for me to use, which is resize. I want to resize this vector. So I can say vector.resize. I need to pass it n, which is the size that it's going to take, and I can also optionally pass it another parameter, which is the elements that will be added to it. So if I'm increasing my vector from, say, 4 elements to 6 elements, then the first 4 will stay the same, but the 2 new ones will default to 0 if I put nothing here, or I can make them default to something else. So in here it's very simple. This is just a myvec.resize. And what we're going to resize it to is a size of n, and the new elements are going to be the same value as the front. Vector.front. Oh, hold up. Is that right? Sorry, not vector.front, myvec.front. There we go. So if I expand myvec to a size of 10, so right now myvec has 22446. If I expand it to size 10, it should go from 5 elements to 10 elements, and all those new ones should be the first value that's here, which is the 2. There we go. 10 elements in total, and all of the new ones are 2's, because 2 is at the front of my vector. Okay, we're moving on to the last one left. Final exercise. Complete 2 more functions. Only nums, given a vector of strings, return a new vector that only contains the strings with a number in them. And also a function called del3, given a vector of strings, return a new vector with the same elements excluding the first 3. So basically skip the first 3 and give us a new vector that has everything else. Let's try it out. Okay, let's put that in here. We'll get rid of these. Let's start with, okay, so this has to return a new vector of strings. So this is going to be a vector string function called only nums, and it is given a vector of strings called myvec. Okay, now before I run through this, let's make sure we can figure out how to tell if one string has a number in it. So how do I do that? Well, probably what I can actually do is I can just make a function that does that. So before I do only nums, I'm going to say bool has number that takes a string s. We want to see, does this string contain a number? How do I do that? Well, for I is 0, I is less than the length of the string, I plus plus, we check to see, is there a character that is a number? And if we have encounter a character that is a number, so if, and I believe the thing we're looking for is called isDigit, is that right? IsDigit, no, 9, something like that. True, isDigit, ampersand, false. Okay, great. So isDigit is the function we want. If isDigit s of I, return true. There is a number in it. Otherwise, if we go through the whole thing, we don't find a number, we return false. So now that I have a function that tells me if there is a number in a string, I can use that over here. which is return a new vector that only contains the strings with a number in them. So I need a new vector of strings called result vector, which initially is going to be empty. Now, for string s in my vector, if has number s, if it has a number in it, then result vec dot push back s. I am going to add that string to the result vector. And when I am done, I return the result vector. And the end result should be that this goes through every string, checks if it has a number, and only if it has a number does it add it to the result vector. What did I mess up? Oh, I forgot. No, I just got to run it from the top. Function definition is not allowed here. Did I miss a symbol of some kind? I feel like I did. Okay, what mistake did I make here? I did something wrong. That matches there, that matches there. Why is there a problem? I feel like I messed up something. What if I delete this and put it here? The vector of strings. Okay, something is fishy here. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Maybe you're shouting at the screen and you can actually see what it is already, but I'm not sure I can tell. My strings vector, yeah. This is not allowed here. Why not? This doesn't do anything, right? I don't think. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Function definition is not allowed here. Something strange is going on, I feel like. Yeah. Returns this. This is... What if I make this a CPP file? Is it still going to have that same problem? I assume this has no issues. Yeah. Is there another problem in here? This bracket goes there, this one goes here, this one goes here. Return. I don't see any other errors. We'll see what happens if I put this in CPP file. ex4.cpp. Maybe the compiler will find something that I missed. G++ compile exercise 4. Seems like there's no errors, so I wonder if just something wacky is going on with the notebook here. I'm not quite sure why there is such an issue. Function definitions, what is going on? I really don't know what's happening. And there's clearly no problem with the code from here. So maybe we're just going to continue with a CPP file. And if somebody happens to know why this isn't working correctly, you can let me know. But as far as I can tell, I don't understand why there is an error. It looks like this should be valid, and it certainly is accepted down below. Vector string, yeah, I don't know what's happening here. But okay, in any case, let's make a main function. Main. So we're going to make a new vector of strings. So vector of strings called my vector, which will, I think maybe we'll just copy the old one that we had. Where was that? Back over here. So here's my vector, and let's make this one have a 0 and this one have a 1. And so if this works correctly, what it should do is it should return a new vector that just has h1 and u with a 0 in it. So let's try it. Vector string result equals only nums my vector, and then for string s in result output S. We'll see how this goes. Compile example 4. Whoops, where'd it go? Oh, because I have to, example 4.cpp, there we go. What did I mess up? Expected comma or semicolon before vector. Did I just forget one? Yeah, I just forgot one. Okay. Clear, compile, go. There we go. So, what is happening with the notebook? I have no idea. If someone happens to know, let me know. I'm going to be excited to find out why this is a problem, because I can't tell. But what I can tell you is that it works perfectly fine as a CPP file, and in my CPP file, I am able to print out just the words in here that are numbers. Now, that's just the first part. We also need to do del3. Given a vector of strings, return a new vector with the same elements excluding the first 3. So, this is also going to return a vector of strings, del3. And it's going to take a vector of strings, my vector. Now, I want to return a new vector with the same elements excluding the first 3, and this is actually not too difficult. What we're going to do is say for I equals, so the first 3 elements are indexes 0, 1, and 2. So I'm going to start from 3. I is less than the size of my vector, I++. And I'm going to put all of these into a new vector. So my vector string is result vector dot push back my vec of I. And we'll return the result vector. Now if I expand this out a bit and say, hi, how are you doing today? And I say my result is del3 of my vector. Let's see what happens. Compile. Whoa, lots of errors. What did I mess up? No match for less than. Oh, that's what because I said less than my vec, but it should be my vec dot size. There we have it. Try that again. Compile's okay, and when I run it, you can see I got you doing today because it removed the first 3 words, hi, how, are, and all that's left is you doing today. So that wraps it up. Not sure what's going on with the notebooks, but maybe that is just a temporary glitch, who can say. But at the very least, it works with our CPP files, which is the most important thing. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.